Nearly 20 years after their emotional final episode, Family Matters remains the third longest-running African-American sitcom.
September 22nd, 1989. ABC television. America sits down expecting another family sitcom, and for the first 12 episodes, that's exactly what they get. The Winslows, a black middle-class family in Chicago. Carl, the police officer father. Harriette, the strong working mother. Eddie, Laura, and Judy, the three kids. And Mother Winslow, the wise grandmother. A stable, loving, educated black family. The kind of representation people had been asking for. The kind of image that could change how America saw black people. But then episode 12 happens. A neighbor kid shows up. Nerdy, annoying, high-pitched voice, suspenders, thick glasses. His name is Steve Urkel, and he's supposed to appear once, just once. A one-episode guest star. But the audience loses their minds, the fan mail pours in, the ratings explode, and ABC makes a decision that will change television history. They make Steve Urkel a regular character. And slowly, quietly, episode by episode, season by season, they erase the Winslow family from their own show. By the end, Family Matters isn't about the Winslows anymore. It's about Urkel. The black family that was supposed to be the center of the story becomes background decoration. For a nerdy caricature who invents cloning machines, travels to space, and cross-dresses as his own cousin. The show that started as positive representation of black middle-class life becomes a cartoon. And the worst part, nobody talks about it. Nobody asks what happened to Judy, the youngest daughter who literally disappears without explanation. Nobody questions why Harriette, the mother whose name started the whole series, gets replaced in the final season like a broken prop. Nobody wonders why the Winslow family, the reason the show exists, slowly fades into the background until they're just supporting characters in Urkel's bizarre science fiction comedy. This is the story of how America chose a clown over a family, how a network chose merchandise over meaning, how a show that could have been important became a punchline, and how the longest-running black sitcom of the 90s taught an entire generation that black families are only valuable as long as they're entertaining white audiences. Don't forget to hit follow, because what comes next will make you rethink every nostalgic memory you have of Family Matters and force you to ask a question nobody wanted to answer. Did this show help black representation? Or did it prove that even when you give black people a seat at the table, you'll still find a way to erase them? The late 1980s. Television is changing. The Cosby Show has proven that America will watch and love a successful black family. Networks are scrambling to find the next Cosby, the next hit that can attract black audiences without scaring white viewers. ABC has a show called Perfect Strangers, a sitcom about two cousins living in Chicago, and one of the supporting characters is Harriette Winslow, an elevator operator at the Chicago Chronicle newspaper. She's funny, sharp, no nonsense. The audience loves her. So ABC and the producers, William Bickley and Michael Warren, make a decision. Give Harriette her own show, a spin-off. Focus on her family. Make it a sitcom about a black middle-class family in Chicago. A police officer father, a working mother, 3 kids, a grandmother, real problems, real love, real representation. And that's exactly what Family Matters is at the beginning. The Winslows are the kind of family black communities had been begging to see on television. Not poor, not struggling in the projects, not criminals or victims. Just a normal, stable, middle-class family trying to pay bills, raise kids, and stay together. Carl Winslow, played by Reginald VelJohnson, is a police officer. But he's not a stereotype. He's a father, a husband, a man who comes home tired, stresses about money, loves his family, and tries to teach his kids right from wrong. Harriette, played by Jo Marie Payton, is the backbone. She works, she holds the house together, she's strong but warm. Eddie, the oldest son, loves basketball and music. Laura, the middle child, is smart, responsible, ambitious. Judy, the youngest, is the cute kid. And Mother Winslow, played by Rosetta Lenoir, is the wise grandmother dispensing advice and keeping everyone grounded. This is the show. This is the vision. A black family that looks like the families in real black neighborhoods, not rich like the Huxtables, not struggling like Good Times, just middle class, just normal. just real. For the first 11 episodes, that's what Family Matters is. A family sitcom. Carl deals with being a cop and a dad. Harriette manages the house and her job. Eddie and Laura navigate high school. Judy is the annoying little sister. It's warm. It's funny. It's grounded. And then, episode 12 happens. Steve Urkel walks through the door, asking for Laura, tripping over furniture, breaking things, speaking in that high-pitched, nasally voice, wearing suspenders pulled up to his chest, glasses thicker than bulletproof glass, and doing that laugh. That ridiculous, grating, unforgettable laugh. The studio audience loses it. They scream, they applaud, they can't get enough. And ABC sees dollar signs. Steve Urkel was supposed to be a one-time character. Jaleel White, the actor playing him, was just a kid doing a guest spot. But the reaction was so massive, so overwhelming, that the network made him a regular. And that's when everything changes. Because Urkel isn't just popular. He's a phenomenon. Kids start imitating him on playgrounds. His catchphrase, "Did I do that?" becomes one of the most recognizable lines in television. Merchandise explodes. Urkel dolls, Urkel lunchboxes, Urkel t-shirts. He appears at Disneyland. He's on magazine covers. He becomes bigger than the show, bigger than the Winslows, bigger than the family that was supposed to be the whole point. And slowly, week by week, the writers start giving Urkel more screen time, more storylines, more focus, and the Winslow family starts to fade. At first, it's subtle. Urkel shows up more often, he's in more scenes. But the show is still called Family Matters, and it's still, technically, about the Winslows. But then the shift accelerates. By season 3, Urkel isn't just the neighbor kid. He's the main character. Episodes stop being about Carl's job or Harriette's struggles or Eddie and Laura's problems. They're about Urkel. Urkel builds a transformation chamber that turns him into Stefan Urquell, a smooth, cool version of himself. Urkel invents a time machine. Urkel goes to space, Urkel clones himself, Urkel cross-dresses as his cousin Myrtle. The show that started as a grounded family sitcom becomes a science fiction cartoon. And the Winslows? They're just there, reacting, hosting, providing a house for Urkel to destroy. Carl becomes the guy who yells at Urkel. That's his role now. Not a father, not a cop, just the man who screams, "Urkel," when something explodes. Harriette becomes the patient mother figure who tolerates Urkel's chaos. Eddie and Laura become romantic obstacles or sidekicks in Urkel's storylines. And Judy. Judy just disappears. Literally. After season 4, Judy Winslow, the youngest daughter, is gone. No explanation. No goodbye episode. No mention of her going to boarding school or moving away. She just stops appearing. And the show never acknowledges it. Not once. The Winslow family had 3 kids, and then one day, they have 2, and nobody says a word. Years later, the co-creator William Bickley admits the truth. Budget cuts. They couldn't figure out storylines for her. The show was too focused on Urkel. They thought the audience wouldn't notice, and they were right. Most people didn't. Because by season 4, nobody was watching Family Matters for the Winslows anymore. They were watching for Urkel. This is what's called the Chuck Cunningham syndrome. Named after a character on Happy Days who disappeared without explanation. It's when a show erases a character and pretends they never existed. And Judy Winslow is one of the most famous cases in television history. A little black girl written out of existence because a network decided a nerdy white-passing caricature was more valuable. But Judy wasn't the only one erased. Rachel Crawford, Harriette's sister, played by Thelma Hopkins, also starts appearing less and less until she's barely in the show. Richie, her young son, fades into the background. Even Mother Winslow, the wise grandmother, gets reduced to occasional appearances. Because there's no room for them anymore. The show is about Urkel now, and everyone else is just furniture. Here's what nobody talks about. Family Matters was supposed to be important. It was supposed to show a black family that was stable, loving, and successful. Not rich, not famous. Just middle class. Just normal. The kind of family that black communities actually looked like, but never saw on TV. Carl Winslow was supposed to be a model of black fatherhood. A cop, yes, but also a man who loved his wife, raised his kids, worked hard, and stayed present. The relationship between Carl and Urkel was supposed to mirror the relationship between Uncle Phil and Will on Fresh Prince, a black man taking in a young person who wasn't his biological child and mentoring him, showing love, showing strength. Academic studies from the 90s and 2000s cite Family Matters as an example of positive black family representation. Researchers point to Carl as a father figure, to Harriette as a strong mother, to the emphasis on education, ethics, and responsibility. The show was studied in universities. It was held up as a model. But here's the uncomfortable question those studies don't ask. If the show was so positive, why did it erase the family? If Carl was such a great father, why did he become a punchline? If Harriette was such a strong mother, why did the network replace her in the final season like she didn't matter? Let's talk about that. Season 9. Family Matters has moved from ABC to CBS. The show is dying. The ratings are dropping. The network doesn't care about it anymore. And in the middle of the final season, Jo Marie Payton, the actress who played Harriette Winslow, the woman whose character started the entire series, leaves, and the network replaces her with another actress, Judy, an elder. They just swap her out and keep going. No explanation, no special episode. Harriette just looks different one week, and the show pretends nothing happened. Can you imagine that? The mother, the woman the show was built around, the character who existed before Family Matters even started, replaced like a broken prop. And why did Jo Marie leave? Because she was done. She didn't want to continue after the move to CBS. She felt the show had lost its soul. And she was right. But there's more. In 2022, Jo Marie Payton gave an interview where she revealed there was serious tension on set. She said Jaleel White, the actor who played Urkel, tried to physically fight her during the filming of an episode in Season 9. She described him as difficult, entitled, someone who didn't respect the people who had been there before him. Jaleel, in his own interviews, said he felt isolated, that he wasn't welcomed by the adult cast, that they resented him for taking over the show, that he was just a kid trying to do his job, and people treated him like he was the problem. So who's telling the truth? Maybe both of them. Because the real problem wasn't Jaleel White. It was the system, a network that decided a gimmick was more valuable than a family. Producers who chose merchandise over meaning. Writers who turned a grounded sitcom into a sci-fi cartoon because it was easier to sell. Jaleel was a child actor, doing what he was told. The adults were watching their show get hijacked, and everyone was trapped in a machine that cared more about ratings than representation. But the tragedy doesn't end there. Michelle Thomas, the actress who played Myra Monkhouse, Urkel's obsessive girlfriend. She left the show in the final seasons because she was diagnosed with a rare stomach cancer. She was 30 years old. She died in 1998, right as the show ended. She never got to see the finale, never got to see the legacy. She was gone. And the show that made her a character people loved didn't even have time to mourn her properly because it was too busy cancelling itself. Family Matters ended on July 17, 1998. Not with a bang. Not with a celebration. CBS burned off the final episodes in the summer. Nobody cared, the ratings were dead. The network had already moved on, and the Winslow family, the family that was supposed to matter, disappeared without fanfare. No reunion special, no retrospective, just gone. And here's the cruelest irony. Family Matters is the third longest-running live-action sitcom with a predominantly black cast in American television history. Behind only The Jeffersons and Tyler Perry's House of Pain. 9 seasons, 215 episodes, almost a decade on the air. And what is it remembered for? Not the Winslows, not Carl's fatherhood, not Harriette's strength, not the positive representation of a black middle-class family. It's remembered for Urkel. Did I do that? Suspenders, cheese, science experiments, a caricature, a clown, a product. That's the legacy. A show that started with the intention of showing black families as normal, stable, and valuable, ended up teaching America that black people are only interesting when they're performing, when they're entertaining, when they're non-threatening and silly and marketable. And here's what makes it even worse. Urkel wasn't even black in the way the Winslows were. He was a nerdy, non-threatening, almost raceless character. He didn't talk about being black. He didn't deal with racism. He didn't represent black culture. He was a cartoon designed to appeal to white audiences who wanted to laugh at something harmless. The Winslows were black, intentionally, proudly. They lived in a black neighborhood. They dealt with real issues. They represented real families. But America didn't want that. America wanted Urkel, because Urkel was safe. Urkel was funny. Urkel didn't challenge anyone. And so the network gave America what it wanted and erased the family in the process. This is the lesson of Family Matters, the uncomfortable, painful, infuriating lesson that nobody wants to talk about. You can create positive representation. You can put a loving, stable, educated black family at the center of a television show. You can give them depth, complexity, humanity. But if that representation doesn't make money, if it doesn't sell merchandise, if it doesn't attract white audiences, the system will erase it. It will find a gimmick, a caricature, a clown, and it will replace the family with the clown. Because families are complicated. Families require nuance. Families force you to see people as human. But clowns are easy. Clowns make people laugh. Clowns don't threaten anyone. And clowns sell lunchboxes. Family Matters could have been important. It could have been a landmark, a show that future generations looked back on and said, that's when America started seeing black families as normal, as valuable, as worthy of respect. But instead it became a cautionary tale, a warning, proof that even when you give black people a platform, even when you put them at the center, even when you promise representation, the system will always find a way to take it back, to water it down, to turn it into something safe and marketable and ultimately meaningless. Carl Winslow was supposed to be a father. He became the guy who yells at Urkel. Harriette was supposed to be a strong mother. She became replaceable. Judy was supposed to be a daughter. She became erased. And the Winslow family, the family that mattered, became ghosts in their own show. Forgotten, irrelevant, background noise. Steve Urkel is a cultural icon. He's on nostalgic listicles. He's referenced in memes. He's remembered. But the Winslows, nobody talks about them. Nobody celebrates them. Nobody remembers that Family Matters was supposed to be about a family, not a nerd with a catchphrase, a family. And that's the tragedy. That's the crime. That's the thing we need to confront. Because if we keep celebrating Urkel without asking what happened to the Winslows, we're complicit. We're agreeing that black families are only valuable as long as they're entertaining. That representation only matters if it makes white audiences comfortable. That the only black stories worth telling are the ones that don't challenge, don't threaten, and don't force anyone to see black people as fully human. Family Matters ran for 9 years. It had 215 episodes. It was watched by millions. It could have changed how an entire generation saw black families, but instead, it taught them that black families don't matter. Not really. Not as much as a joke. Not as much as a product. Not as much as a white audience's comfort. And 50 years from now, when people look back at the 1990s and ask, how did television treat black families? Family Matters will be part of the answer. And the answer will be they erased them. Slowly, quietly. With a smile and a laugh track, they took a family that mattered and turned them into props for a clown show. And nobody stopped them, because the ratings were good, the merchandise was selling, and America was laughing. So what did it matter if a little black girl disappeared without explanation? What did it matter if a mother got replaced like a broken appliance? What did it matter if a father became a punchline? It didn't. Because in the end, Family Matters proved that black families only matter as long as they're making white people comfortable. And the moment they stop, they disappear. Just like Judy. Just like the Winslows. Just like the promise that representation would actually mean something. If this story made you see Family Matters differently, if it made you question what representation really means when it's controlled by people who don't value the community being represented, don't stay silent. Like, share, and subscribe so we can keep uncovering the truths hiding behind the shows we loved. Because sometimes, the most important stories aren't the ones that made us laugh. They're the ones that made us forget. And Family Matters made us forget that it was supposed to be about a family. A black family. A family that mattered. until the network decided they didn't. But there's one more piece of this story that needs to be told. One more layer of erasure that makes everything even more painful. Because it wasn't just the Winslow family that got erased. It was the people behind the scenes. The writers, the directors, the crew members who believed they were making something important. And the actors who watched their careers get defined and then destroyed by a show that promised them visibility but delivered invisibility. Let's talk about what happened to the cast after Family Matters ended. Because that tells you everything you need to know about what the show actually did for black representation. Reginald VelJohnson, who played Carl Winslow, the father, the police officer, the man who was supposed to be a model of black fatherhood, he never became a leading man. After 9 years carrying a show, after being the moral center of one of the longest-running black sitcoms in history, Hollywood looked at him and said, "You're the guy from Family Matters." And that was it. He got typecast. He became the black cop dad. Every role offered to him was a variation of Carl Winslow, and when those roles dried up, he faded from mainstream television. He still works, he still acts, but he never got the career he deserved, because Hollywood didn't see him as Carl Winslow, the complex father navigating work and family. They saw him as the guy who yelled at Urkel. Jo Marie Payton, who played Harriette, the woman whose character literally created the show, she walked away angry, and she had every right to be. She spent 8 years building a character, being the backbone of a series, representing black motherhood with strength and warmth. And the network replaced her in the final season like she was defective equipment. After Family Matters, her career slowed. She did voice work, occasional guest spots, but she never got another leading role. She never got the recognition she earned. Because the industry didn't value what she represented, they valued what sold, and what sold was Urkel. Kelly Shaninia Williams, who played Laura, she tried to build a career after the show ended. She did TV, movies, guest appearances, reality shows, but she never escaped Laura Winslow. Every interview, every new project, every attempt to be seen as more than the girl Urkel loved, it all came back to Family Matters. She's still acting. She's still working. But 30 years later, when people see her, they don't see an actress with range and talent. They see Laura, the smart, pretty girl who existed to be pursued by a nerd. That's her legacy. That's what the show gave her. And Darius McCrary, who played Eddie, he's had the most visible post-Family Matters career, but even his story is complicated. He's acted in films, done music, stayed in the public eye. But he's also dealt with personal struggles, legal issues, public battles that get covered by tabloids. And every time his name appears in the news, the headline is always Eddie from Family Matters, not actor Darius McCrary, not musician and performer. Eddie from Family Matters. As if 9 years playing a character erased every other part of his identity. As if the show that was supposed to give him a platform actually built him a cage. But the most painful story is Jamie Foxworth, the actress who played Judy, the little girl who got erased. After Family Matters wrote her out, after they decided a child wasn't valuable to the story anymore, Jamie struggled. She's talked openly in interviews about how being cut from the show destroyed her sense of self-worth. She was a child. She didn't understand why she wasn't wanted anymore. She thought it was her fault. She thought she did something wrong. And when the work stopped coming, when Hollywood moved on, when she aged out of being the cute kid without ever getting a chance to grow into anything else, she spiraled. She's been open about her struggles with depression, with financial hardship, with making choices she's not proud of just to survive. And through all of it, the question haunted her. Why wasn't I enough? Why did they erase me? The answer, of course, is that it was never about her. It was never about her talent or her value. It was about a network that decided a little black girl wasn't profitable, that her storylines weren't important, that the audience wouldn't miss her, and they were right. The audience didn't miss her, because the audience was too busy laughing at Urkel, and that's the cruelty of it. Jamie Foxworth's childhood, her sense of self, her career, all of it sacrificed so that a show about a black family could become a show about a nerdy caricature. And nobody cared, nobody protested. Nobody demanded answers, because in the hierarchy of value that television taught us, A black girl's humanity mattered less than a white audience's entertainment. Now think about Jaleel White, the one person whose career was made by Family Matters. He became a household name, a cultural icon, a millionaire before he could legally drink. And even he couldn't escape. He's talked in interviews about how Urkel became a prison, how casting directors couldn't see him as anything else, how he spent decades trying to prove he was a serious actor, not just a catchphrase with suspenders. He did dramatic roles, action films, voice acting, reality TV, anything to break free from the character that made him famous. And some of it worked. Some people respect his range now. But for most of America, he'll always be Urkel, the nerd, the joke, the product. And here's the devastating irony. Jaleel White, the person who benefited most from Family Matters, also became a victim of what the show represented. Because when you build your career on a caricature, when you become famous for performing a version of blackness that white audiences find non-threatening and marketable, you can never fully escape it. You can never be seen as a whole person. You're always the character, always the joke, always the thing that made white people comfortable. And that's what Family Matters did to everyone involved. It promised them visibility. It promised them a platform. It promised them representation. But what it actually gave them was a trap, a cage built of laughter and nostalgia and merchandise sales. The Winslows were supposed to be a family, but they became props. The actors were supposed to build careers, but they became defined by roles that limited them. And the show that was supposed to matter became a footnote, a cautionary tale, a reminder that representation without power is just performance, and performance without respect is just exploitation. Here's the question nobody asks. Who benefited from Family Matters? Not the Winslow family, because they got erased. Not the actors, because they got typecast or forgotten. Not the black community, because the show taught America that black families are only valuable when they're hosting a circus. So who won? The network won. ABC made millions from advertising. The producers won. Aaron Spelling and his team created a franchise. The merchandise companies won. Urkel dolls and lunchboxes flew off shelves, and white audiences won. Because they got to feel good about watching a diverse show without ever having to confront the reality of black life. They got to laugh at Urkel's antics without ever thinking about why a show about a black family stopped being about the family. They got to consume black culture, black talent, black creativity, and then move on without ever acknowledging the cost. That's the legacy of Family Matters. Not the warm family moments from the first season, not Carl's lessons about integrity, not Harriette's strength. The legacy is this: you can create positive black representation, and the system will still find a way to commodify it, dilute it, and ultimately erase it. You can put a black family at the center of a television show, and the network will still decide that a white-friendly caricature is more valuable. You can have 9 seasons, 215 episodes, millions of viewers, and still end up teaching the world that black families don't matter as much as black clowns. And the most painful part? We let it happen. We watched it happen. We laughed along. We bought the merchandise. We quoted the catchphrases. And we never stopped to ask, wait, where did the family go? Where did Judy go? Why is Harriette replaceable? Why is Carl just screaming at Urkel now? What happened to the show that was supposed to matter? We didn't ask because we didn't want to know. Because asking those questions meant confronting something uncomfortable. It meant admitting that we valued our entertainment more than we valued representation, that we cared more about nostalgia than we cared about the people who created it, that we were complicit in the erasure of a black family because we were too busy enjoying the spectacle to notice they were disappearing. Family Matters could have been a legacy. It could have been a model. It could have shown an entire generation that black families are complex, loving, valuable, and worthy of being seen as they actually are. Instead, it became a warning, a reminder that the entertainment industry will always prioritize profit over people, that networks will always choose what's marketable over what's meaningful, and that black representation, no matter how positive, will always be expendable if it stops making white audiences comfortable. So when you think about Family Matters now, 30 years later, don't just remember the theme song, don't just remember "Did I Do That?" Don't just remember the laughs and the nostalgia and the warm feeling of childhood Friday nights. Remember Judy, the little girl who vanished. Remember Harriette, the mother who got replaced. Remember Carl, the father who became a punchline. Remember the Winslow family, the family that mattered until the network decided they didn't. And remember that every time we celebrate Urkel without mourning what was lost, we're agreeing that the erasure was acceptable. We're saying that black families are only valuable as long as they're entertaining. That representation is only important if it's profitable, and that the cost of making white audiences comfortable is a price black people should be willing to pay. That's the lesson of Family Matters. Not the lesson they intended to teach, but the lesson we all learned anyway, whether we wanted to or not. All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on historical research and publicly available information. This video examines the cultural impact and legacy of Family Matters as a piece of media history and its complex relationship with black representation and network television priorities.